For this story, I'll call myself Nolan. It all began the way most gym friendships usually do. You keep seeing the same person again and again, you give a small nod, nothing serious. After some time, you stop acting like you don't recognize each other. You just say, "What's up?" casually, like it's normal. I was going to my gym almost every day after work, same time, same routine. It was the only part of my day that felt steady and predictable. One of the regulars, there was a guy named Josh. He had that vibe like he really wanted people to see him as a serious lifter. Always wearing fitted shirts, always carrying a shaker bottle, and always dragging around a big duffel bag. He was there so often it almost felt like he lived there. At first, it was just small interactions, a quick nod when we passed each other near the dumbbells, pretty normal. When you keep seeing the same faces, it feels weird not to acknowledge them. Josh seemed friendly. He would smile and do that quick chin lift like we were already cool, even though we really weren't. One day, I was about to start bench pressing, and he was already using the bench right next to mine. He looked over at me and asked if I could spot him. That's when things actually started to become something more. I said sure and stood behind him as he lifted the bar. He was strong, I'll give him that. He pushed through a few reps, but on the last one he struggled, so I helped guide the bar back onto the rack. The moment he sat up, it felt like he had been waiting for this chance. He immediately started talking. He asked how long I'd been lifting, what my workout split was, basic gym talk. I answered, and he shared his too. He spoke fast, like he had a lot of energy. Then he started asking more personal stuff, where I was from, what I did for work, and if I lived nearby. I kept my answers simple. I didn't give anything specific, just general details. He told me he lived not too far from me and laughed like that meant we were meant to be friends. Before I went back to my set, he asked if I had Instagram. He pulled out his phone casually, so I followed him back. It didn't seem like a big deal. People exchange socials all the time now. It's basically the modern version of sharing numbers. For the next couple of weeks, things stayed mostly the same but slightly different. Whenever Josh was there, he would come up and talk. He'd ask what I was training that day and sometimes comment on my form or lifts, like he was coaching me, even though I never ask. It wasn't rude, just a bit too much. I figured he was one of those guys who treats the gym like a social place. Sometimes he'd DM me gym memes, silly stuff, videos of people failing lifts, or edits of bodybuilders with dramatic music. I'd just react with a laughing emoji and move on. I didn't want to be rude. It seemed like he just wanted a gym buddy. Then one day, he messaged me about a local festival happening that weekend. He suggested we should go together. I didn't even know about it, so I looked it up. It was one of those typical town festivals, food trucks, cheap drinks, random stalls, live music, and a crowd mixed with families and people just there to get a buzz in the middle of the day. I hesitated at first, but then I said yes. It sounded like something to do. I thought it would be a quick hangout, and if things got awkward, I could just leave early. When the day came, I met him there in the afternoon. The first thing I noticed was how different he was outside the gym. At the gym, he seemed controlled. Out here, it was like he had no off switch. From the moment I saw him, he was loud, way too loud. He walked up with a big grin, slapped my shoulder hard, and started talking like we hadn't seen each other in years. Then things got strange. He started doing these weird voices, cartoon-like voices, high-pitched, nasal, then suddenly deep and rough. He would say normal sentences, but in these random voices like he was constantly doing impressions. It didn't match the situation at all. It wasn't like we were joking around, he just kept switching voices for no reason, like he couldn't stop himself. At first, I laughed because it caught me off guard. It was so random that it felt funny for a second. But then it didn't stop. We grabbed drinks and started walking around, and it felt like the alcohol flipped a switch in him. His jokes started getting more inappropriate, not in a clever way, just for shock value. He would point at random people and say things that should never be said out loud, especially not in a place full of families. He kept trying to make me laugh by saying things that could easily get him punched if the wrong person heard him. I found myself doing that forced smile, laughing a little, but constantly checking if anyone around us heard what he said. But Josh didn't care, not even a little. Sometimes he would say things while looking directly at people like he wanted a reaction. A couple of times I told him to chill, to calm down, but he would just laugh and then switch to another voice. One of them was worse than the others, a creepy whisper. He would say my name in that voice, Nolan, slow, quiet, almost like it was part of some joke only he understood, and he didn't do it just once. He kept repeating it. There was something really off about how much he enjoyed saying my name like that. Still, the festival was loud and crowded. I kept telling myself he was just socially awkward. Maybe he was trying too hard. Some people lose all sense of limits after drinking. I didn't want to judge him too quickly based on just one day. We stayed there for a couple of hours. When I finally went home, I couldn't shake the feeling. He was strange, but I told myself he was probably harmless. After that day, things started changing. He began messaging me a lot more, not just memes anymore. Now it was constant messages, checking what I was doing, asking if I was going to the gym, asking if I wanted to meet again. At first, I replied, but slowly I started pulling back. I'm just not the kind of person who wants to text all day with someone I barely know. One weekend, he asked me to go out to a bar. He said he had invited 2 girls to meet us there. That made it feel more normal, like, okay, this isn't just going to be the 2 of us. There will be other people. So I agreed. We met at the bar at night. The moment I saw Josh, I could tell he had already been drinking. His eyes looked unfocused, and his confidence was way higher than usual. We ordered drinks and waited. About 10 minutes passed, then 20 minutes. No one showed up. I finally asked about the girls. He just shrugged and said they weren't coming, like it was nothing, like it happens all the time. But the way he had talked about it before, it sounded almost like a double date. Right then, I had this strong feeling he made the whole thing up just to get me there. That thought didn't go away. And then the voices started again, but this time it was worse, way worse. He wasn't just doing random cartoon voices anymore. Now it was strange, uncomfortable sounds, fake laughing, fake crying, then suddenly switching into a deep, heavy voice like some movie villain. He kept mixing these sounds into normal conversation like it was completely normal. It wasn't. He kept doing it right there at the table while people around us were just trying to enjoy their night. I noticed a couple nearby glance over at us and smirk, but not because it was funny. It was that awkward kind of reaction, like they were watching someone embarrass themselves. And somehow Josh noticed, but instead of stopping, he leaned into it. He got louder, started telling jokes that didn't even make sense, then laughing way too hard at his own words. Every time I tried to bring the conversation back to something normal, he would cut me off with another weird voice. Then he started saying my name again, Nolan, listen, Nolan, over and over, like he couldn't speak without pulling me into it. At that point, I felt uncomfortable just sitting there, not just because of the people around us, though I knew I probably looked weird just being there with him, but because his whole energy felt off. It felt wrong. People were clearly watching now. Even the bartender looked irritated, like she was thinking about kicking him out for being too drunk. But Josh didn't slow down. He kept drinking, ordered shots, and tried to push me to take them too. I said no. He didn't like that. He joked that I was boring, then made a weird crying baby voice to mock me. I forced a small laugh, but inside I just wanted out. I checked my phone and made the decision right there. I was leaving. I told him I had to go help my brother with something, first excuse I could think of. Josh stared at me for a second like he didn't believe me. His face changed. He looked annoyed, actually annoyed, like I had just ruined his night. He asked why I couldn't just stay. I repeated that I had to go. He muttered something under his breath, then did that fake laugh again, but this time it didn't sound funny. It sounded angry. I stood up, told him I'd see him at the gym, and walked out. He didn't even say goodbye. As I left, I could feel people looking at me, and I knew why. We had become a scene in there because of him. The moment I got in my car, I felt relief, like I had been holding my breath the whole time without realizing it. Right then, I made up my mind. That was it. I wasn't hanging out with him again. Seeing someone at the gym is one thing. This was something else. The next time I went to the gym, I saw him again. I tried to avoid looking at him, stayed on the opposite side, hoping he wouldn't notice. But he did. Of course he did. He walked right up behind me while I was putting dumbbells back and said, "What's up?" Like nothing had happened. Like that night didn't even exist. He was overly friendly again. He asked why I left so early. I kept it simple and said I had to help my brother. He asked if my brother was okay. I said yeah. Then he started talking about going out again, like he was already planning the next time. I kept my answers short, told him I had a lot going on. He didn't get the hint. He stayed there talking while I tried to continue my workout then. He started following me from one machine to another. Every time I tried to end the conversation, he would start a new one. It felt like he had decided something, like I was his person now, and he wasn't letting go. After that, I started changing my gym timing, sometimes earlier, sometimes later, just to avoid him. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, and on the days I didn't see him, I felt better. But then the messages started more than before. If I didn't open them, he would send another one. If I saw it and didn't reply, he'd message again, "You good?" That message started showing up a lot. Eventually, I stopped opening my Instagram DMs completely. I hated seeing his name pop up. Every single time, it felt like a knot tightening in my stomach. I honestly thought that if I kept ignoring him long enough, he'd eventually get bored and just move on. But that's not what happened. One night I was lying in bed trying to sleep. It was a hot summer night, and my window was slightly open. My room is on the first floor facing the backyard. That's when I heard it, a voice, low, stretched out, like someone was trying to sound creepy on purpose. It said my name, not loud but close, way too close right outside my window. Then suddenly silence, just the sound of the wind. That sudden stop made it worse. I sat up in bed, completely still, listening carefully. Nothing. I got up slowly and walked to the window. I looked through the blinds. I couldn't see anyone, but I felt it, that feeling like someone was out there watching. I don't know how to explain it, but it was real. Without thinking, I whispered through the window, asking if it was Josh. I didn't even mean to say his name, but it came out because it sounded exactly like him. There was no answer. I stepped back from the window and grabbed my phone. My mind started racing. How would he even know where I live? I never told him my address. I never posted it anywhere. I opened Instagram and sent him a message. I asked if he was outside my house. After sending it, I just stared at the screen, feeling stupid, but I needed to know. A few minutes later, it showed seen. That made it worse. He saw it but didn't reply. Those few seconds felt like hours. Then finally he responded, just one word, no. That was it. Nothing else. No question. No confusion. Just no. It didn't feel right. If someone asked you that, wouldn't you at least ask why? I didn't reply. I put my phone down and tried to forget it, but the next day, he messaged me again, asking why I was acting cold and distant. I ignored it. I didn't want any conversation. I didn't want to give him anything to hold on to. But that night, it happened again. This time, the voice wasn't right outside my window. It was farther back, in the backyard, near the fence. Same voice, same fake, creepy tone, like someone trying to scare me on purpose, like Josh doing one of his voices. He said my name again, slow, stretched, unnatural, then suddenly stopped, like he noticed movement inside. I jumped up and rushed to the window, pulled the blinds open, and stared out. The yard looked empty, completely empty. I closed the blinds immediately and locked the door. Even though it was hot, I shut everything completely. I turned my fan to full blast just so I wouldn't hear anything else. Then I grabbed my phone and messaged him again. This time, I didn't ask. I told him straight if he didn't leave and if he ever came back, I would call the police and file a restraining order. I even called him a freak. Then I blocked him right after sending it. I put my phone down and told myself that was the end. I had drawn a line. Any normal person would back off after that, but Josh clearly wasn't normal. I lay there staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Even with the fan running at full speed, my ears were still searching for any sound outside. Part of me felt this horrible curiosity, like if I didn't check the window, something worse would happen. Slowly, I turned and lifted the blinds just a little, and that's when I saw it, a figure right near the window, standing still, just a dark outline, so close that it blocked some of the faint light outside. My heart dropped instantly. I shouted at the window, loud and clear, telling him to get out and never come back. The shadow moved, slid away from the window, and disappeared into the darkness. I stood there shaking, waiting to hear something, a gate, footsteps, anything, but there was only silence. After that night, I didn't feel safe in my own room anymore. Every small sound made me think he was back. I completely stopped going to that gym. I didn't want him knowing my routine. I signed up at a different gym across town. It was more expensive and farther away, but I didn't care. I also stopped posting on Instagram for a while. Every night, I kept my blinds closed, and I kept checking my locks again and again, almost obsessively. About 3 weeks passed. Nothing happened. Slowly, I started to relax. Then one morning, I walked out to my car and saw my rear tire was flat. I bent down and looked closer. There was a clean cut on the side, not a puncture, a slice. Someone had slashed it. My stomach dropped. I looked up and down the street like I expected him to be there watching me. I didn't try to contact Josh. He was already blocked, and honestly, confronting him would only make things worse. If he did this, it meant one thing: he was still watching, and he wanted a reaction. I refused to give him one. I replaced the tire that same day, and I also bought security cameras. I installed Ring cameras around the house, front and back. I added motion lights in the backyard. I didn't like spending the money, but I hated the idea of being unaware even more. After that, I kept a very low profile. I stopped going out late. I changed my routes home, and every time I got a motion alert, I checked it immediately. But the worst part of all this wasn't the fear. It was the realization that someone I met in the most normal place, someone I was just trying to be friendly with, became this obsessed after hanging out just 2 times. And once someone like that decides you're important to them, once they believe you're their person, it's almost impossible to remove them from your life. So if there's one thing I learned from all this, be careful who you let get close to you.